All right, so you know how we like to dig into the stuff most people don't even realize is going on beneath the surface?
Yeah, the hidden patterns, the inner workings, that kind of thing, right?
Right. Well, today we're going deep on something that might surprise you. A real secret struggle that folks who feel drawn to something bigger, something more meaningful, often face.
Those who feel like they've got a purpose, a calling.
Exactly. And we're calling this deep dive the secret battle against lust.
That's an interesting one.
It is, right. And we're basing this on a really fascinating YouTube video from the Spiritualizer channel. It's in Spanish, but we'll translate and break down the key takeaways for you. The title translates to 5 reasons why the chosen secretly struggle with lust.
The chosen. That sounds a bit loaded.
I know, right? But the way they use it in the video, it's not about being superior or anything like that. It's more about describing folks who feel this powerful pull towards something beyond the everyday. It could be spiritual growth, creative expression, even just a deep desire to serve others. People like you, actually.
Yeah, I get it. It's that sense of being driven by something, a force that's bigger than yourself.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack those 5 reasons the video lays out. Because let's face it, it's kind of paradoxical, right?
It is, yeah. You'd think someone so focused on higher pursuits wouldn't be wrestling with something as, well, basic as lust.
Right. But the video makes a really compelling case that this conflict is actually deeply intertwined with their journey.
Like it's part of the process even.
It makes you think about all the unseen battles we all face, right? The stuff beneath the surface.
Definitely. And that's why we're diving in. So let's start with that first reason the video presents. Lust, they argue, can be a huge distraction.
A drain on attention and energy that could be directed towards that greater purpose they feel called to.
Like a detour, pulling you away from your true path.
Exactly. Whether that path is spiritual enlightenment, creating art, or making a positive difference in the world.
So how do they illustrate this? It's not just about willpower, right?
Not just willpower, no. They use this really vivid analogy of a carefully cultivated garden. Imagine someone tending to these rare and beautiful plants, right? Investing time, energy, resources.
Pouring their heart into it.
Totally. And then, subtly, these weeds start to take root, competing for the same nutrients, water, sunlight that those prized plants need to flourish.
Oh, I see. The weeds represent lust.
Exactly. And just like those weeds, if left unchecked, can choke out the flowers, the video argues that lust can consume the very resources someone dedicated to a higher purpose needs.
Time, mental space, even physical energy that could be going towards something so much more meaningful.
Right. So instead of deepening your meditation practice, you're caught up in fantasy. Instead of honing your craft, you're chasing fleeting gratification. Instead of serving others, you're entangled in these superficial connections.
Wow, when you put it like that, it really highlights the opportunity cost, doesn't it?
It does. It's like having these 2 powerful currents pulling you in opposite directions.
And that brings us to the second point the video makes. How lust can cloud your mental clarity. It's not just about the time you lose.
It's the focus, right? You're not fully present.
Exactly. When your mind is constantly drawn to these desires, it becomes so much harder to maintain the concentration you need for those bigger goals.
Like trying to read a complex map while being bombarded with flashing lights.
Or trying to solve a puzzle with a bunch of extra pieces that don't belong.
Yeah, that's a good one. The video really emphasizes how lust can clutter your inner landscape, making it so much harder to put in the sustained effort and discipline required for real achievement.
And it can affect your resources too, right? Not just time and energy, but also finances.
They touch on that, yeah. Money that could be invested in personal growth, supporting a cause you believe in, or funding your creative projects might get channeled towards fulfilling these fleeting desires.
That's a powerful point. It's like investing in short-term pleasure at the expense of long-term fulfillment.
Exactly. And it makes you think about what constitutes that greater purpose for each of us. It doesn't have to be saving the world, right?
No, not at all. It could be anything that resonates deeply with your values.
Living with more integrity, being a better parent or friend, expressing your unique talents, making even a small difference in your community.
And lust, in its various forms, can really undermine those goals, even the seemingly small but personally significant ones.
Absolutely. And that leads us to the second reason the video explores, which builds on this idea of distraction. It's about how lust can actually block that deep spiritual connection many of these individuals are seeking.
Interesting. So it's not just about being distracted from your goals, but also from something more profound.
Precisely. The video argues that lust essentially anchors you to the physical, to the material world.
Making it harder to access those higher states of consciousness, that intuition, that sense of interconnectedness.
Exactly. It's like you're trying to rise above, but you've got this weight dragging you down.
I can see that.
Ah.
It's like being stuck in the shallows when you're yearning for the depths.
That's a great way to put it. And they use this really powerful analogy to illustrate this. Imagine trying to tune in to a distant radio station, one that's broadcasting a vital message.
Okay, I'm with you.
But there's all this interference, right? Static, distortion, making it almost impossible to clearly hear what's being said.
And that interference represents lust.
Exactly. It creates this inner noise that drowns out the subtler spiritual signals.
I get it. It's like trying to meditate in a noisy room.
Yeah.
Your mind is bombarded with thoughts, desires, all pulling you away from that stillness.
And the video makes the point that when your mental energy is constantly drawn to those immediate gratifications, it's so much harder to quiet the internal chatter, to silence the ego, to really open yourself up to that inner guidance or that sense of the divine or whatever resonates with you.
Makes sense. It's like trying to have a deep conversation in a crowded, noisy room. You can barely hear yourself think.
And when you think about practices like meditation, contemplation, prayer, which are so central to many spiritual paths, the video highlights how much harder they become when your mind is constantly agitated by these desires.
Because you can't fully surrender to the practice.
Right.
You're still holding on to those desires.
Yes, you're divided. And this leads to another consequence the video explores: guilt and shame.
That feeling of being unworthy, impure, somehow.
Exactly. And the video argues that these feelings can really damage your self-perception, undermining your self-confidence and self-esteem.
Which are so important for a healthy relationship with your inner self, with the divine, with whatever you consider sacred.
Absolutely. And it creates this vicious cycle because those feelings of unworthiness can actually block you from experiencing that deeper connection you're seeking.
It's like building a wall between yourself and what you're longing for.
Right. And the video also points out that this can spill over into other areas of life. Lust, they argue, can lead to impulsive decisions, poor choices.
Which can then have negative consequences in relationships, at work, even with your health.
Exactly. And those negative consequences just reinforce the guilt and shame, further deepening that sense of spiritual disconnection.
So, lust not only distracts us from our goals, but also blocks us from connecting with something deeper.
And that brings us to the third reason they discuss: this idea of misdirected sexual energy.
Oh, this is a big one. It's something a lot of spiritual traditions talk about.
Yeah. The video posits that sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces within us.
It's like a raw primal energy.
Totally. And when it's channeled into lust, it can actually drain your vital reserves, leading to these patterns of dependence.
Both emotional and physical.
Right. But here's the really interesting part. The video emphasizes how those who feel a deeper calling often intuitively understand this.
They recognize the power of that energy.
Exactly. And they actively try to transmute it, to channel it into something higher.
Creativity, compassion, spiritual insight.
Yeah. They see it as a force that can fuel their journey, not derail it.
So how do they explain this process of transforming that energy?
They use the analogy of a powerful river, which I really like. Imagine a river that can be harnessed to generate electricity, to irrigate fields, to bring life and abundance.
Okay, picturing it.
But that same river, if its flow is mismanaged, if it overflows its banks, can cause immense destruction.
Oh, I see. And lust is like that uncontrolled flow, right?
Precisely. It misdirects that potent energy into fleeting fantasies, compulsive behaviors, relationships that lack real depth or meaning.
Like a short circuit. The energy is there, but it's not being used constructively.
Exactly. And the video points out that this can create a kind of energetic trap. You become reliant on those quick hits of gratification.
And you lose the capacity to experience deeper, more lasting satisfaction.
Right. It's like constantly snacking on junk food when what you really need is a nourishing meal.
So you end up feeling empty, even though you've indulged.
It's a bit paradoxical, right? And the video highlights how this can lead to a downward spiral. The pursuit of lust becomes more and more intense, but the satisfaction is always fleeting.
Leading to more guilt, more shame, more emptiness.
Exactly. And all that vital energy that could be fueling creative projects, acts of service, spiritual exploration is just wasted.
leaving you depleted and disconnected from what truly matters.
But the video doesn't leave you hanging there. They offer a really encouraging perspective. They emphasize how these individuals consciously strive to transmute that energy.
To sublimate it, to channel it in a more positive direction.
Exactly. Through practices like meditation, yoga, breathwork, artistic expression, even altruistic service.
It's like building those dams and canals to guide the river's flow.
I love that analogy. And that brings us to the fourth reason the video explores. They view this ongoing fight against lust as a test.
A test of what? Willpower.
Willpower, discipline, but also something deeper. It's about strengthening your character, cultivating integrity.
So it's not just about resisting temptation, but about becoming a stronger person through the process.
Exactly. And they use this brilliant analogy here. Imagine an athlete training for a marathon. Each training run, each hill they climb, each obstacle they overcome makes them stronger, more resilient.
Yeah, I can see that. It builds their physical and mental endurance.
And the video argues that each time you consciously choose to navigate the pull of lust, you're doing the same thing for your inner world. You're building your willpower, your resilience, your self-mastery.
It's like weight training for your mind.
I like that. And it reframes the whole struggle. Instead of seeing it as a sign of weakness, it becomes an opportunity for growth.
Each challenge becomes a stepping stone.
Precisely. And the video emphasizes that integrity in this context goes beyond just being honest. It's about aligning your actions with your values, living authentically, being true to your purpose.
So the struggle itself helps them become more aligned, more whole.
Exactly. And every time they choose to prioritize their higher values over those immediate desires, they strengthen that alignment.
It's like weaving a tapestry, thread by thread.
And each victory, no matter how small, brings them closer to realizing their true potential.
It's about becoming the best version of themselves.
And the video acknowledges that this is a journey, not a destination. There will be setbacks, times when you slip up.
But it's about progress, not perfection.
Right. And the key, they say, is to approach those missteps with compassion, to learn from them, and to keep moving forward.
To see them as part of the process, not a reason to give up.
Exactly. And when you do that, the video suggests this struggle can actually become a path to deeper self-knowledge, to a more profound sense of spiritual fulfillment.
So the struggle itself becomes a source of strength and wisdom.
And that leads us to the fifth and final reason they explore. It's about balance.
Balance in relation to what?
In relation to sexual energy itself, the video argues that it shouldn't be repressed, but it shouldn't control you either.
It's about finding that middle path.
And they use this really helpful analogy of a tightrope walker. To stay balanced, they're constantly making these tiny adjustments.
Shifting their weight, adjusting their posture, making sure they don't fall.
And the video suggests those dedicated to a higher purpose are engaged in a similar process with their sexual energy. It's about finding that equilibrium.
Not too tight, not too loose.
Exactly. And they caution against both extremes. Trying to completely repress that energy can lead to its own problems.
Frustration, tension, even a blockage of creativity.
It's like trying to hold back a powerful current. Eventually, it's going to find a way to break free.
And on the other hand, being totally consumed by lust leads to those cycles of compulsion and disconnection we discussed earlier.
So the key, the video argues, lies in integration. Consciously and constructively bringing that energy into all aspects of your life.
Honoring its power, even its sacredness, but not letting it rule you.
Exactly. And this involves learning to distinguish between the fleeting impulses of lust and the deeper yearnings of your soul.
It's about becoming more self-aware, understanding what truly nourishes you.
And as you do that, you can start channeling that energy into fulfilling relationships, meaningful pursuits, and that deeper connection you're seeking.
So it becomes a source of creativity, not destruction. A force for good, not a distraction.
Beautifully put. And the video concludes by emphasizing that this integration, this wholeness, is essential for living a life aligned with your purpose.
It's about becoming a complete human being.
So, to recap, we've explored 5 key reasons why those dedicated to something greater often find themselves battling lust.
It can distract them from their mission, block their spiritual connection, drain their energy, test their willpower, and teach them about balance.
And the video makes it clear. This isn't a sign of weakness, but a significant part of their journey.
It's a catalyst for growth, for self-discovery, for becoming more aligned with their true selves.
Which leaves us with a final question for you, our listener. What are the unseen battles you're fighting?
The ones that might be shaping your path, even if you're not fully aware of them?
What does it mean for you to find that balance between your deepest drives and your highest aspirations?
It's something worth pondering.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.